everyone. We're here for my probably going to be the last big production day of spoiler season, and I have three wonderful guests on to talk about the plethora of cards, including some that I've already talked about quite a bit. So, without much further ado, first up, I've got three guests. They are crowphie, Seb, and Syd7, also known as Jason, which will become relevant as we get later through the call. I'm going to have each of them in turn introduce themselves and say how long they've been playing and kind of what their relationship with Netrunner has been for the last little while. So, crowphie, I've got you up first here on the guest list. Oh, hold on. I forgot. I messed up and didn't hook up your audio to the stream. Now you can go a second time.
Hi, I'm crowphie, real name Sophie. If you hadn't figured, I've been playing since late 2020 when I was introduced to the game by my university. I organised events at my uni for a while, and I'm a member of Null Signal's balance team.
Fantastic. And Seb, well, you're up next.
Sure. So, hey, I've been playing for about 2 years now. I started with System Gateway, and I played a lot of Startup, and then eventually made the move to the Standard. So that's all I've been playing now.
All right, and Jason, you're up last, but definitely not least.
Hi, my name's Jason. Sort of appear on things as Syd7, and I started playing Netrunner in I think it was 2017, right before the end of when like FFG lost the license, in like the Katara cycle basically. And in 2020, I was the American Continentals champion, which is a bit of an old credential, but you know will pop up in a minute.
Very cool. All right, well, today we had a bunch of spoilers, including mine. We're going to start going through those because I actually I would love to keep chatting with all three of you. We've been having a nice chat in the green room, but so to speak. But I do kind of have to get moving a little bit because I haven't built my decks yet for the event tomorrow, and I'm getting on a train at 6 a.m. in the morning, so have to start actually figuring that stuff out. So the first card, and I still do not know how to pronounce this card. I believe it is Saucy. It is a 1-cost, 1 MU program Trojan, and its text is install only on a piece of ice. Whenever host ice is rezzed or derezzed, gain 3 credits, and it is a single pip of influence. So who's got some thoughts on this card?
I do think you're right. It is Saucy. I was looking it up earlier, and it's also apparently like there's a mythical character in Brazil named Saucy that can turn into this bird, the striped cuckoo. And apparently he's like to blame for any like minor inconvenience in your life. Anytime you stub your toe or mulligan into 4 agendas, it's Saucy's fault.
Oh, it's a nice little pairing a theme with this little annoyance of a bird.
I have a very important note on this card.
All right.
The art is phenomenal.
Yeah,
it is so good.
Yeah. No, this is an astounding piece. It is, you know, one day null signal cyberspace won't be defined by hands grasping out for a thing, but in terms of hands grasping out for a thing, this is a phenomenal piece of that portfolio.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I heard that this is meant to be the bird flying through the tithe. That it is the same hands.
Okay, that's very cool. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think this card is sort of interesting as to what its place is. In the video I put out, I kind of compared it to a card like Cash, which I don't know. Like, do you guys buy that, or do you feel like that's maybe not really where this ends up?
I think that's a pretty interesting comparison. Like,
Yeah.
you instead of getting your you pay 1 for it, but with Arasana you don't have to pay the click to install it necessarily, and then you get 5 credits of value out of it, so it's sort of 1 less unit of value, but maybe it comes down clicklessly. But then if it's reusable, if you're picking it up again, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of value here, but it's tough to, figure out where it goes.
Yeah, I guess the other part of that question was like Cash saw play in both Anarch and Shaper, but didn't see any play in Crim. Do we think that that's going to be true of Saucy, or do we think that the res res synergy is enough to make it like something you would look at in Crim decks of some various types?
I think it's probably okay in some of the more niche Crim decks, like if you're doing things with Rubicon Switch, that's pretty okay. This is a nice way to subsidize the cost of doing Rubicon, which gets very expensive very quickly. In more general, regular decks, I don't see the value proposition on this working out. You're not really de-resing stuff, and in that case, you're gaining net 2 credits from it.
Yeah, I mean, Los will love it, right? But I'm not sure if it goes into like a red Crim. Although maybe Mercury also likes to de-res stuff, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is hard to find a spot for like this card actually has to trigger twice to be even like if you just install it and get the res, it's actually worse than an easy mark. So like you definitely need to get some more value out of it somehow, and that kind of pushes it out of what we currently think of as red Crim in a lot of ways. But Rubicon Switch, we have our good new friend Capybara. Like maybe you could, if you're starting to do that stuff, you can start thinking about maybe, if this triggers twice, now it's a card for 5 credits, and that's a little bit better than a sure gamble. It does require you to jump through some hoops, but maybe that starts lining up with what you want to do.
I think a lot of the time you're hoping that once you get the first
Criminal kinda has this
de-res...
problem where, like, Sorry about that.
So Sophie, why don't you go first, and then we'll...
I think it's slightly slow on my end. I think a lot of the time what you're hoping with this is, once you get the second trigger from de-resing the ice, that you're then much more likely to get the third trigger. Like if you're playing against an ice-light deck and you stick this on a really crucial piece of ice, like one of their 3 Anansies they have access to, it's not like they can probably afford to trash this to get rid of the thing. And if you de-res it, then they probably have to res it again eventually, and at that point you're getting your guaranteed 3 triggers, which is amazing value.
Right.
Yeah,
and I mean, even if they do trash it, like that's usually not too bad, right? Like I'll play this as a parasite or hippo or whatever,
Yeah, that's true. If this does end up being a parasite or a hippo or whatever, that's a pretty good deal for a 1-cost program. So, I think those are all good shouts for it. I think we should talk about this other program that was spoiled. This one spoiled by a good friend of the show, Patrick Sklar, also frequent guest on the Metropole Grid. This is a 1-cost, 1 MU, so 2 of these back to back in the Crim card pool, and it also starts with an S. I don't know if this is Shibboleth. This is a program icebreaker decoder. It has the ability Threat 4. This program gets -2 strength. Interface 1 credit. Break a code, get subroutine 2 credits for +2 strength, and a base strength of 3, all for 2 influence. So this is the first threat card we've seen that makes the card get worse as the game goes on. I'm kind of curious what the 3 of you think about that.
I mean, I think it's pretty good. I think like this gives you enough time to like rush and put a lot of pressure on early, and then even when it goes down, it's like not the worst, right? Like it's probably still better than like Cat's Cradle or something like that.
I think it's pretty interesting. These cards that get weaker for the runner as the game goes on, I think are pretty compelling. The typical sort of arc of like the runner building up a board state and the corp losing control over the game as the game continues, I think is, I don't know. I like anything that kind of works against that, where a runner is able to like do be powerful early on and then weakens. And I think it makes the game dynamic and more interesting. So conceptually, I'm a really big fan of this.
I'd be interested to try it in any of the decks that are capable of winning out of nowhere, like winning from 3 points to 7 in one turn, which I think at the moment is mostly deep dive decks that can potentially try and hit 2 agendas off their deep dive and win the game via that, or potentially even Essa. Obviously, Buzzsaw is pretty great, but Buzzsaw costs 4 credits to get down and does not boost very well. And Essa is more than happy to just win the game from 2 points to 7 out of archives if given the chance.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a really interesting shout out. And Essa is going to be in desperate need for new breakers because all of your breakers has been bin breakers basically. As much as I love my my trunk cat, it's not seen a lot of play just yet. Maybe it will, but even so, this is the only breaker I think that it goes obviously into that deck. So yeah, that's definitely a good shout.
I think they're also worse at using the potential turbine suite than Hashiko is, so you maybe want to be looking at different options.
Yeah.
Rather than just the cleaver and the buzzsaw and the killer doesn't matter.
Yeah, we all just put Mimic in there and pretend it's 2014 all over again. Yeah, do you think so? I guess the question is, do you ever run this in like a Reg 419 deck?
I don't hate it. Like,
Yeah.
it is probably better than Cat's Cradle on average, and while you never actually wanted to use Cat's Cradle, you were playing that and hoping that you'd use the boat for the code gates. I mean, it's probably okay.
I think you can probably run this and Amina, and then use Mutual Favor to get whichever one you need. You know what I mean? Like, use this for the opening turns of the game, and then once it's threat 4, you're set up enough to install an Amina and use it for the rest of the game.
Yeah, or even, I mean, if you're just, you could also rely on Amakua, right? And this will just be your backup to get you back up to counters on the turtle.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thought I had is you could maybe try it in Freedom with Imp, where you just imp their agendas and eventually win the game at some point by stealing all the ones you've put in their archives.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the interesting dynamics with threat is like what decks seek to circumvent threat and like avoid going to a high threat zone. And I could definitely see some strategies based around like I'm just going to try and trash agendas, not steal them, so that the scary corp stuff doesn't turn on, and I build my deck so that I don't need high value threat effects. And Shibboleth actually goes really nicely in that deck.
So we're talking about an Audrey deck here, I guess.
Audrey definitely seems interesting for that style of deck too. I can't pull up Audrey super fast, but I would. Oops, that's the wrong one. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't want to get us stuck on a ones to install breaker for a long time. So I might move on unless any of you have some final thoughts you want to put in on this card. All right, so with that said, I think we're going to go on to a card that one of the people on this call designed, or at least contributed directly to its design. So this is Syd7, also known as Jason Ford's champ card. This is Joyride. This is a Shaper run event. Just simply says, run R&D. If successful, draw 5 cards. This is 3 influence. So Jason, you were saying just before the stream, the event you won, but or what decks you were playing when you won. But I feel like it'd be good to give you, a quick second or two to describe the 2020 American Continentals and the decks you were bringing for that.
Oh, sure, yeah. Oddly, no Shaper, but that's kind of maybe part of the story and how this card got made. Running punitives, unlike the sort of other tablet ASO that was run at the same time, but mostly just leaned on violet level clearance to win games. And then on the runner side, I brought a kind of a run-based Hoshiko that was mostly just kind of a good stuff deck, but it wasn't running liberated accounts because I figured at the time liberated was too slow to compete with all the Titans that were really popular at that event. If anyone's thinking back to 3-year-old metas, but yeah, that's what got me the that win and the champ card.
So I guess then the next obvious question is, okay, so you played Asa and Hoshiko. So what was appealing to you about designing a Shaper Draw event, I guess?
Yeah, so even though I won that event with with Anarch, I basically spent the first like 2 years playing the game doing like janky
No, you cut
Please
out.
Cafe. Ooh,
Okay.
Apologize.
You cut out just a bit there.
Sorry, I think I got a little bit of latency trouble. Apologize for that. Yeah, so I spent about 2 years, my first 2 years with the game, just playing kind of like janky Shaper decks. And and I spent a ton of time with Polly's Cafe in particular. And those decks always needed to draw more cards. And like Earthrise was always kind of like a really unfortunate option you got stuck with a lot. So I was like, okay, we need a way to draw cards in Shaper. Also wanted to build like a reason for Shaper to be more aggressive. Like I like Shaper, but I really hate the like, oh, I'm just going to slowly build out this board and then pin you down and play this long game where eventually I'm unstoppable. So I wanted a reason for Shapers to be aggressive, to ice R&D on turn 1. Like when I started playing, indexing was really popular. And like, so if you were against Shapers on the other side of the table, you would prioritize icing R&D. Whereas if a Criminal or an Anarch was on the other side of the table, you might put your first ice on HQ. But then after indexing rotated, like pretty much the incentive for the Corp on turn 1 is to always ice HQ before R&D, no matter the faction. And I wanted a reason to sort of change that. I also was kind of really interested in like, we have all these run events for criminals that run HQ and extract some kind of value, right? Even in Anarch too, because we have Chachuska, right? There's Hot Pursuit and Embezzle and even like CBI Raid, and of course Diversion of Funds and Siphon. But all the R&D run events just draw cards, or not draw cards, just access cards, right? Except for like codes.
Yeah, Code Siphon was
The way it could like generate value by running R&D. Yeah. So I suggested this. I suggested this to June. I had like 2 ideas. I had this and like a really janky, complicated sort of Trojan card. And they were kind of like, well, we're going to print Joyride either way. Now that you suggested it, and you can have your name on it, or we can like help you design this other weird card that probably won't be very good. So, and it just happened to fit in with this set really well. Like they were just barely starting to kind of work out the mechanics for Parhelion at this time. Not Parhelion, Liberation.
Yeah.
And it just happened to kind of fit in really well.
Yeah, so I really like the part of it's like, oh yeah, this June going, yeah, this card is just going to be printed. It can be your champ card or not. It does feel like this is a effect. It's like, oh yeah, this does all the things you want so well, of like making early runs really incentivized, putting pressure on the corp, but not like just doing that in the form of accesses. So like it's super, like this fits in with what, good gameplay patterns that we want to see so well. So I'm really excited to see this card come into play. I want to give both crowphie and Seb a chance to chime in on their thoughts on this card for a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is sick. I mean, 5 cards is just so many cards, and like, I can just imagine like Arisana, running R&D, dropping a program, and then you're making it successful and drawing back up and refilling, right? And then you have more programs to install. Like, it just seems so good.
I'm so ready to play prepaid voice pad and ghost tongue in either lat or tau and just completely brick my mulligans all day. This is so cool.
Yeah, I do actually.
It's so many cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think the ghost tongue shout is
but
actually
4 is
really
enough. And then
good.
June was like, no, it's 5 cards.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's got to be 5. It has to be a little bit too much to be convenient, right? But yeah, I do think Ghost Tongue's an interesting shout because, like, oh yeah, if I'm playing a Joyride deck and I want to have like a prepaid voice pad, like maybe I just do want to spend 3 to 6 influence on Ghost Tongue, and then when I draw more events, I can just start playing them immediately for even more kind of value savings. So.
Like, the hand size is an issue, but I don't know, I'll just discard the ones I don't need right now. Like, if there's not a great target for Into the Depths, you just discard it and you play your sure gambles and whatever.
Yeah, the chat is also asking me to pull up the relevant earlier card of Quality Time, and yeah, Joyride is like a credit and a full like action better, and I think it's kind of cool. Though I think like draw being dependent on successful run actually makes the dynamic really different, because if you can't make a successful run, I would much rather have a Quality Time than a Joyride. But if I can make a successful run, then immediately I want the Joyride like 1,000 times more, which I think is a really interesting draw, like part of a dynamic.
Yeah, I really wonder, like, there's going to be games where this is just a brick, right? Where the corp reses an Anansi on R&D, and you're like, it's never going to be worth it for me to pay 2 and break an Anansi to draw 5 cards. So I think I think there's a decent amount in like nuance, like to try and get value out of it. Of course, Arasana makes that so much easier.
Also depends what's in your hand, because you might just let Anansi fire and you draw back up because you're drawing 5 afterwards.
That's a good point.
Yeah, none of these cards are doing anything for me. They belong in the trash. We'll just embrace our Anarch side, right? Yeah, so I don't know. This is one of the cards I like. I'm excited about all these Shaper cards, but like this is the one to me where I'm like, yeah, this seems like it's gonna end up doing some really cool stuff at some point, with despite having extremely simple text, which is a really good place to end up.
I did a little tiny bit of playtest, and like playing this in Arasana always felt really incredible, because like you got to get your important cards into hand so you can use your ID ability, and like you would just spend the whole game being like, all right, if I can just get one of these to land, then we're doing good,
Yeah, I think that's a super, like, I was finding at different times in playtesting, like I would play a game against someone with Arasana first, and they would like ice HQ and then like do their first turn, and I would go like, all right, gamble Joyride, and they'd go, oh god. And then we would play the next match, and their first ice would go on R&D, and I'm like, that's so cool that we're getting back to some of that dynamic. So I'm hopeful that Joyride sees enough play to make that something that people think about at least. But all right, let's move on to the next card. This is one of the ones that I got to spoil today. This is Slap Vandal. This is another one cost, one MU program. Just all the one cost programs today. This is a program icebreaker AI Trojan. It says install only on a piece of ice. Interface 1 credit. Break 1 subroutine on host ice. This uses ability only once per encounter. It's 2 influence and 6 base strength. Who's got
This
some
art
first?
is so cool.
Oh,
That's the first thing I gotta say. Just the toll booth all tagged up. It's so cool.
it's so nice. It's on the screen twice. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic piece of Adam Doyle art. It's really great.
The little turtle sticker on the toll booth, the little Amicula sticker, is such a little delightful Easter egg.
Yeah, because that's also an Adam Doyle piece, right? If am I remembering
Yes,
that
it is.
correctly? Yeah, let me.
It is, I believe. I have the playmat of it. I'm pretty sure it's an Adam Doyle piece. Please
Yes,
tell
it
me I'm not
is.
wrong.
No,
Oh,
it
thank
is.
Christ.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this is very clearly an Arasana card. Um, I guess like, do, do the three of you feel like this is something that you're going like brings you into bringing Arasana, something that you play because you kind of have to, or do you think maybe this is just a card you don't play with at all? I'm kind of curious.
I do think it finds a slot. It's like it doesn't feel like a slam dunk to me, but it just it lets you trigger your ability and then trigger your console, trigger the urban art. And it just the breaking one subroutine can probably be a problem at some point, but I don't know. The ice has also been depowered, so maybe that's fine now.
I think poison vial is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Um, and like, I don't know, we got to do a quick Rolodex of all the 2 end the run subroutine ice in the game, 2 or more, you know.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of ice that have like one subroutine that like you don't really want to fire, but isn't going to stop the run, and then like an end the run behind it. So I'm like, oh yeah, like if they, and like this is actually a thing that I'm like, wow, this actually does break a gatekeeper. Probably not something you want to run through a bunch, but in a pinch, you can get through something like a gatekeeper. You know, if we think about like a border control or something, like again, these are like some standard meta cards, and it's like, oh yeah, I can break the key subroutine the end the run if I have to, and it's going to cost me a little bit, but you know, maybe in the early game I can make that worth it.
Yeah, the fact that Arasana gets to play this at 0 influence compared to previously before this card was revealed when it was like, do we have to import Botuli for our early accesses? It's a really big factor, I think, in making her work on a competitive stage. If Botulus was your only access to this kind of effect that you could install from your grip with her ability, that's so much of your influence already dedicated that it really reduces your ability to play good breakers and play clot and play sufficient money.
Very neat. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a card I think we'll have to kind of keep an eye on. It might end up being that like you do just want to play Botulus because it's a better long-term solution, and it's you have the inf to spare. Um, but I don't know. It seems like a fun kind of aggressive shaper tool to try and get your joyrides to land early in the game, which is a really nice piece. I always talk a lot about how I want shaper to have more limited use like one shot tools, and I think slap vandal is like a really a step in that direction.
Also, this lets you say the verb when you install it that you slap their ice, and that's just brilliant.
There's also technically nothing stopping you from installing multiple slap vandals and just like firing them off on one piece of ice if you like are struggling to find your breakers. Um, so probably not a super common play, but maybe something you could do sometime. Uh, all right. Let's I mean, so we haven't been talking about and oh no, never mind. I was gonna say we were gonna move on to the next like a centerpiece shaper card, but that's still a card number away. So we're gonna talk about I think I'm gonna call this a quirky card. This is Umbrella. This is a 3-cost 1 MU program icebreaker decoder weapon. And it says this program can only interface with ICE hosting a Trojan program. Interface 2 credit, break up to 3 code gate subroutines. If at least one subroutine was broken this way, each player may draw 1 card. This is a base strength of 5 and is 2 influence. So who's got a first thought on this card? is to secretly kit support.
I think the really stupid combo you can do with this is the ability says up to 3, so you can if you got a ice with 3 subroutines,
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit there.
it's not. Oh, sorry.
So I think I heard the combo is you can break up to, and then I think you kind of cut out a little bit.
Oh yeah, so you can in a very silly way, you can use this on every subroutine that exists because you can choose to break one subroutine each time, and then you get to draw a card each time. So if you hit like a Fairchild 2, you can spend 6 credits and draw 3 cards, which is not good, but it's very funny.
You know, I don't think I'd ever thought about that. And the other interesting thing about that is the corp now needs to also make 3 decisions on whether or not to draw. So maybe if you're flooded with money but lacking in draw, maybe Umbrella's choice there is interesting.
I was
Yeah.
thinking that you could do some cool stuff where, like, you run through an ice that has a Cubone on it with the umbrella, and you draw a card, and maybe they draw a card, but you're also making your money back, and maybe you're getting some extra value from the run. And then I remembered, like, all the code gates that see you play, and the biggest one is probably Magnet. And then I felt sad.
Yeah, the fact that this is going to, like, you're going to put a Trojan on a magnet and then have to break this is going to definitely feel sad. But, you know, if it's something like an Enigma, maybe. Oops. I think you're much happier.
Yeah, the chat's mentioned a teeny. That lines up really well if you're only paying 2 credits to break in a teeny with this.
Yep. Yep. We also have the new MIC Mick. That's a 4 strength 3 subroutine coat gate. So you slap a coupon on that and waltz right through. Seb, you
Like, the
got
potential is massive.
yeah. This like has some real good. If the code gates mostly stay in the 5 strength and lower range, like Umbrella doesn't have to do that much work to start being a card that you could think about playing. I guess Seb, do you have any thoughts on this card?
Yeah, I mean it does feel clunky, but it's like I hope it finds a deck that it's good in, I guess. You know, because it seems really cool and like the interesting with the thing with Magnet is like it'll automatically like gets its, if you don't accidentally put something on it, like it'll pull something on it for you. Now you can actually interface with it. But the other thing was the living mural. You can put living mural on a code gate, and then now this can break it when then the living mural can still break ice on that server, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's kind of neat. So you can have you get 2 breakers going at once, and like normally Umbrella is like asking you to have like your breakers for your other types, and then your Trojan also on the ice, and Living Mural kind of condenses that. That's a nice little shout out. Because yeah, Living Mural doesn't need to actually be hosted on a sentry, and just breaks other sentries in that server, which is kind of cool. Um, are any of you tempted to look at Egret with this? Just make any for 4 credits, break any 5 strength piece of ice.
Feels a little expensive, but like if you put an egret on an Anansi, it's probably the cheapest way to continuously break an Anansi in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's probably worth trying, but I'm not sure it's going to make the cut in the long run.
Hmm.
But Arisana has so many different bits going on in her deck, and this I don't think is worth playing outside of Arisana, that I'm not sure you can find even just the 2 slots for this compared to playing a more reliable decoder.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I wish it was better with kit, but like yeah, having to have Trojans on all the ice is too much of an ask, I think.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Um, Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Maybe Kit can just start playing Cubon and can even play the next card that I'm very excited to talk about because it's a big Shaper Engine piece. This is Urban Art Vernissage. This is a 2-cost resource. It is a job. It's ritzy, and it says when your turn begins, you may add one installed non-virus Trojan program to your grip. If you do, place 2 credits on this resource. You may spend hosted credits to install cards. And this is 2 influence. And this, I think, is like, it's funny this is the last number numerically for Shapers, and I put it last in my video because I thought it was the card that like changes how you think about all of the Trojans. Maybe I should have done it first, but I don't know. I think this card's really interesting, and I'm kind of curious to hear you know what, Jason, I might start with you as the person who came on here and talked about being a diehard Shaper player for a while. What your thoughts are on this card? Or maybe we'll have a little bit of audio issues. That's always good. So maybe Seb, I'll go to you next instead.
I mean, this card's just, it's a banger, right? Like this puts the whole Trojan package, like it wraps it up and like enables all of it, right? Like I think you could even use this to bring, you know, a couple of Trojans out of Arasana, and it's still just good value, right? To me, like 2 credits per turn seems so good, and you can just use it to install anything, and then charge up your twinning, do whatever. It seems it's just a banger.
Yeah, I think the twinning is definitely a good shout. I guess if you were trying to take this out of Arasana, what Trojans would you want to bring in with you?
I mean, Saucy is something you could look at, and then I think you're just
Being
looking
able
for
to
something
gear.
cheap, right? Something maybe even Cubon if you really, still if you're still in Shaper, that might do something for you there.
Yeah, I mean Cubon's even 1 influence, so you could even think bring these as a pair.
Yeah.
Because this definitely is like a okay, I can install the Cubon if I pass that piece of ice and then return this. Maybe that's a ceiling of kind of 4 credits, which definitely starts to look appealing. 4 credits for kind of the click to install Cubon, as long as I can make the run already. That starts looking kind of interesting. Jason, it sounds like we are hearing you a little bit, so I don't know if you want to get in with your thoughts.
I don't have too much to add, but yeah, just it allowing you to move around, your Trojans, the slap Vandal, I think is a pretty big deal. And yeah, it really gives you the kind of flexibility and the hopefully the cash to like actually run an engine without having to commit, you know, 60% of your deck to traditional money cards.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. One card I'm very curious to see if sees any play because of this is environmental testing, which I was kind of high on when it got initially released, but then it turns out like you can only install SMC and Simulchip so many times, then you have to install your real stuff and wish you had the cash up front. But now we can just install the same Cubon over and over and over again, and that starts looking kind of appealing. But Crowphie, I also want to make sure you get a chance to put your 2 cents in on this card.
I mean, on the subject of environmental testing, I do really like the change compared to something I take Fermenter, for example, as an economy card that's somewhat similar, that's been seeing a lot of play recently, where this isn't just raw credits. You do actually have to use this for a specific purpose, which means you do need to be thinking, okay, I now have a pile of credits on my Urban Art Vernissage. When do I find my environmental testing to install for 0, or my daily casts to install for 0, or whatever other thing you're putting down?
Yeah. I guess maybe a question is how many Trojans do you feel like you need to run to make this Urban Art Vernissage like worth putting in your deck? Is maybe another interesting question here. And maybe how many copies of Urban Art Vernissage do you think you're going to be putting in your first draft?
That's the wild thing is like I think you could run like run two Cubon and like that'd be enough for this. You can just keep reinstalling it, right? Like what you just got to find it once and then that's enough to get this engine rolling. I do think it's better with more Trojans, of course, but like I feel like there's a low barrier to entry there.
Yeah, so in that
Yeah.
hypothet, that's interesting. That's very very low. It's just like, oh yeah, I'll SMC for a Cubon at some point in the game, and that'll be enough to get this engine going.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're not Arisana, I mean, maybe you don't want to spend a click installing a Cubon just for 2 credits every turn, but even then, it's not that bad if you're running through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a much lower barrier. Like comparing it to Aesop's, there's sort of a much lower barrier for what the card has to do to then be a target for this. Because like with Aesop's, if you're installing, it's not really worth it. Even installing something for 0 to trash it once and get no further value isn't really worth it in an Aesop's engine. Like if you install a pad tap and it doesn't make you any money and then you trash it to Aesop's the next turn, that's not really a high enough barrier. But with this, you can to back up again. So it's an interesting. The comparison is, I don't know. There's some interesting nuance between the two, obviously.
Yeah, it is interesting that like Aesop's was the Shaper engine for a long time, and really was like, I want to install a thing, use it, and then I'll sell it. So I'll sell you all your spent gear. And Urban Art Vernissage is like looking to reuse the same couple of cards over and over and over again, which is kind of interesting.
I think in Arisana, I'm probably starting on 3 copies of this. I might go down later if it turns out that's too heavy, but I think this is such a key card to getting that engine up and running that you need to be seeing it as early as possible.
Yeah, I think that's usually been the case with kind of engine style cards, is you start with 3 of them and then just figure out if you need all 3. So I suspect that's where this is going to start. I guess the question is that's also maybe interesting that's brought up in the chat is if it's a Cubon installed and the Shaper player has an Urban Art Vernissage, what situations do you start thinking about overwriting the ice that's hosting the Cubon on it?
As a corp,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth. I mean, it's like we were saying earlier. Like if my Cubon becomes a hippo, like I think that's fine. Like Arisana is just going to put another Cubon down somewhere. As a runner, I'm okay with them trashing their ice to get rid of my Trojans. So I don't think I would ever want to do that as a corp. Unless it's like, okay, they put it on a unres tithe or something. Okay, yeah, I can get rid of that. But
This is something I think comes up in. I played a lot of SI recently, and like you corp ices HQ on turn 1, then I put a botchless on it, planning to Shushushka later. And I'm quite happy when the corp overwrites that ice, because instead of building a remote to try and win the game, they're slowing themselves down. So I think I'd probably be happy here as well. Granted, the win condition is probably going to be quite a bit different in this Arasana deck, but just played enough ESA recently to be very happy when my Trojan makes them overwrite something. And that's a botch list that I installed for 2 and have no way to get back,
Yeah, it's
or
true.
very limited like recursion tools. If I have a
Yeah.
simul chip on the board, I could just put it back immediately as soon as it's overwritten.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Is that like simul chip, like being in the Shaper faction makes it even easier and more natural. Like I suspect every Arasana deck, at least for a while, is gonna start with 3 Urban Art Vernissages, 3 simul chips, 3 Cubons, and then you kind of fill in the rest of the owl, however you want. And that seems like a good place to start, and does probably make that value prop of trashing your own ice a little bit worse. I know when Arasana was spoiled, there was a lot of people talking about using World Tree with her ID ability, so you could like put down a Mayfly and then like use the like make use of the programs that are going to get thrown out. Um, Urban Art Vernissage also isn't terrible World Tree support to some extent, right? And you could turn your coupons into valuable programs or turn your, you know, invaluable stuff maybe into Trojans as well. Do you guys feel like Urban Art Vernissage and World Tree could end up in the same deck? Or, yeah, maybe I'll leave the question there.
I feel like they clash a little bit, right? Because then if you're, I mean, I don't know. I guess what depends what you're world treeing out, but I feel like, are you gonna world tree out a Trojan to then pull out, put it back to your hand with Urban Art? Actually, that doesn't seem bad now that I'm saying it out loud. Because it's all. I was also thinking like you could play world tree and like Arisana out a Trojan and then world tree it away to get a more efficient breaker or something. Right, get your 2 credits off the coupon and then get rid of it for a bigger breaker or something like that. That was my initial thought with world tree.
Yeah, and you could upgrade your slap Vandals into like your better breakers for sure later in the game, which might be kind of a neat little interaction.
I mean, even early in the game, you can run R&D, throw down a Cubon. Well, you have World Tree out, which is a problem I haven't solved. But you run R&D, throw down a Cubon for free. When the run's successful, you turn it into like a conduit,
Yeah, yeah.
I think you get your conduit counter then on that run after the run ends.
Yes, I believe here we can pull up conduit, but I'm pretty sure conduit says whenever a successful run on R&D ends. Yeah, so it doesn't need to be there at the start; it just needs to be there by the time the run ends, which is kind of cool.
But I think, I mean, the big Woo deck that was running World Tree also had Aesop's, and those two had the same issue of like they both want to use the same resources. But I still think it was correct to run both in that deck. So by that logic, maybe you could run both of these in the same deck.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be an interesting and open question. Personally, I'm probably not going to be looking at World Tree right away, but I would not be surprised if Baram Wu is. And maybe World Tree was strong enough to get Cabinet's Wu ban, so I would not be too shocked to see it do something at some point again. But I guess any final thoughts on Urban Art Vernissage before we go to the last card that was spoiled today?
It is probably worth noting that Ika has a nice little role in this deck as a way to get Urban Art Vernissage value even when they don't have any ice installed, or if they're overwriting your stuff very intentionally, because it's a Trojan that doesn't have to be installed on an ice all the time.
Yeah, Ika is a very particular, is like the only Trojan I think that doesn't get installed directly on a piece of ice right now, so that definitely is a very good shout. You probably don't want, and I'm worried that might push Living Mural out, which I think is definitely an interesting Arasana card and like an interesting threat interaction, because like the fact that like people are like, oh, it's not really going to be worth it for Living Mural because you're just going to install it once, and then the like threat strength buff isn't ever really going to be relevant. It's like, well, with Urban Art Vernissage, it'll probably be relevant through the entire back half of the game. But that might not be as good as just putting down a zero cost Trojan that you get to bounce back. So we'll have to see. I think with that though, let's move on to the final card. This is another one I am super excited about. But on the opposite side of the table, this is Tucana. It's a unique 2-cost upgrade. This is remote server only, persistent. Whenever an agenda is scored or stolen from the root of the server, you may search R&D for 1 piece of ice. Install and res that ice, paying a total of 3 credits less. And this is 3 influence and 1 to trash. So who's got an initial thought for me on this one? Maybe crowphie, I'll go to you first here.
I playtested this in sports a couple times, and the first time I scored an agenda and got a 0-cost magnet out of my deck to shore up my HQ, and then the next turn scored a bifurcation out of this remote, and then got a drafter and put that on R&D, I was immediately sold on this card being a banger.
Yeah, no, that the early tempo seems pretty solid. I don't know, Seb or Jason, either of you got initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love fast advance. Either outfit or sports is like what I pretty much only play in standard right now, and this seems great in both of them.
Yeah, scored or stolen is a really big deal. Because if you compare it to something like Amaze Amusements, Amaze being triggered just on stolen kind of doesn't make it good enough to see play, but the proactive ability to score off of it makes it a lot more compelling.
Yeah, I hope like it'll be interesting to see, like, we've kind of seen scoring corps like disappear in the last month or two. Like they're either fast advanced decks or they're kill decks. And I wonder if Tucana can bring back some of the like the PD style corp decks. They're like, no, I'm just gonna put an agenda in the server, and we're gonna play this. We're gonna play that version of Netrunner, and Tucana's gonna help me keep moving forward while I score. Um, that'll be interesting. Yeah,
I
as
agree that I like this in PD, but the loss of GFI, Global Food Initiative, for PD seems like it's a pretty big deal. Like, I don't know what that deck's agenda suite looks like anymore.
yeah, that's
It'd be
that.
interesting to try though, because that you do just throw out random upgrades in that deck, and it's like, oh, am I gonna pinhole the Tucana or the main gun? Doesn't really matter. I still have to run through an answer and a brand to get into the remote.
Yeah, that's a yeah. When we have our million possible face down upgrades, because Tucana doesn't have to get rezzed until the last moment, more or less, if the runner's going to try and get in. So it can even just kind of bluff as a bunch of things face down, and this isn't like a region, so you can stack it on top of everyone's favorite Tranquility home grid, and keep powering things up. So that's definitely going to be an interesting pattern. I also saw a lot of people talking today about like using Tucana out of like ASA to then like go and install an ice and then install another thing in the server. I'm kind of curious what the 3 of your thoughts are on that.
I think it's likely janky, but will kill people who aren't expecting it, dropping a snare on someone's head.
Yeah, I guess
Will that enable some more gank loops?
I mean, that is, I think, one of the possibilities, right? Is
search for an on sell, install your gank from hand.
yeah, yeah. I mean, at that point though, you're probably spending a bit of oh, sorry, Jason.
No. My problem. I just wonder if you're still running Gatekeeper in this PD.
Oh, you think because you're
Yeah,
losing
Karen
all
was
the
talking about
on.
a minute ago.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Would you still run Gatekeeper in like a Tucana based like scoring PD deck? I feel like probably. I think maybe you just try and never actually get the Gatekeeper, and just hope that you have enough other ice you can get. Install and res for 3 less is like like you're gonna probably have to put actual money into most ice you want to res, which is maybe a reason not to bring in a Gatekeeper, right? Because it's like, oh, what do we have that's cheap? We've got, oops, I can't spell magnet, and then it's like drafter maybe, but it's like even if I'm like, oh, I really want to put like I think one of the things that could be interesting to me about this is like, oh, I rush behind like a cheap flimsy piece of ice, then I get to go and put a border control on my scoring remote for like 1 to 2 credits, uh, and that starts looking kind of interesting because like I can snowball my own tempo a lot. Or if I'm flooded, I can like install an agenda, install my Tucana, and like some flimsy piece of
Yeah, border
ice.
control's a really good use of this.
And kind of like be, the fact that this is scored or stolen maybe lets you push pretty aggressively and go, I'll probably come out ahead even if I lose this. Um,
Yeah, even one trigger seems like you're getting some pretty good value.
yeah, I guess like you are paying 2 to res it, so it's only actually generating you 1 credit, but then you also get the whole, okay, what's the best ice for this board state value, which is probably not to be entirely underestimated.
Ignoring the 2 cost to res this for a moment, if you grab I'm not sure how to pronounce it, a Valentau, the new ice outfit, the bully,
Yeah.
you're gaining a credit if you get that off this, and you can pay 1 credit to get a trebuchet.
In outfit?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I was like, how are we making money off of these expensive ice? But yeah. So if we're the outfit, we can, and like we just go and throw a what's it like? I can't pull up the Portuguese bully, but I can pull up trebuchet. Yeah, getting a trebuchet res for 1 credit does seem pretty good, pretty good. So that's definitely interesting. I think someone in the
Actually,
chat.
being able to...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. In the outfit, actually, that's pretty compelling because being able to accelerate your bad publicity while defending yourself can really move you towards scoring regulatory captures as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think like actually hadn't thought about this before, but like if you're gonna play the harmonics, like Tucana starts looking good so that you can like tutor out your echoes really early and make sure they're like rezzed and in time. Um, so it's like there's a lot of ice that's like positional or kind of, I'm gonna call it like temporal, or you want it to be like active in certain parts of the game, and I think Tucana can help kind of make these a little bit more consistent to find value. Someone in chat also mentioned Arella Salvatore, which I think is another, like, just stack all the score triggers in one server and just tempo out the win, especially in something like Sports Metal. It could be kind of fun and silly, though it's 6 influence for 1 copy of each of these, so you might have a little bit of, like, how do we actually make this work? But I don't know.
Well, the difference in trash costs between these cards is very funny.
It's true. Yeah, Tucana's one. Maybe you don't want to run too many Tucanas because it is going to make R&D pretty weak. But I don't know. I think it's a card I'm excited to try out and a lot of stuff. I don't know how I haven't mentioned. I've gotten this far without mentioning Op, but Op also loves this. Because it gets you more res cards on the field, which is always good, and then it's also in faction, and you tend to score pretty aggressively. So it seems to fit a lot of things that deck wants, and that deck sometimes is looking for 2-cost targets. And like, hey, if I extract an Afshar, get a Tucana, and then score an agenda out of Tucana later in the game, I can put another Afshar right back on HQ, and I've just netted all the value in the world, right? So.
I do like just how flexible it is, right? Like it's scored or stolen, gives you a lot of options to put it in lots of different decks.
Yeah, score or stolen definitely seems like a big deal. All right, well, we're starting to hit. We just hit 7 o'clock my time here,
Ooh,
so
sorry. One more thing. When you mentioned Op, you can do the Malapert trick with this, right? In Op, if you score an Arzief and trash a 3-cost thing, you can install the Tucana and then still get the trigger from it.
yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, so you could. I mean, yeah, that's funny. You can like, in that same scenario where we have an Ozef that we're scoring and there's like a rezzed Afshar once again, we can trash the Afshar and then replace it with an Afshar. So we've basically avoided the whole downside of Ozef protocol. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that Tucana to me seems like an upgrade that can be a lot of fun and like push scoring corp plans. So I'm hoping it becomes a big part of the meta. But and then Oddball also mentioned the other stuff that works with it, like ping, pulse, and an enemy. Also, all work with it because you can install it. If they're on our accesses, you can like install. If they steal the agenda, you can install the enemy, and it's still during the run, so you can do some net damage, or you can give them a tag with ping. So there'll be some fun things with that. So yeah, but I think with that we should probably start wrapping it up. I might finish with, we've seen now almost the entire set. What deck we'll start with Jason maybe. What deck do you think you want to build first when you get your hands on the new cards, be it JNet or in person?
I think I'm obliged to do something with 3x Joyride. So that's probably an Arasana deck.
All right, Seb, how about you?
I'm gonna be trying this slash and burn outfit for sure. That card is so cool, and the expendable mechanic is just, I love that. It's just a new way to interact with cards.
Right, and Crowphie, last but certainly not least.
I mean, Hashiko will still continue to be good, and I'm interested in seeing, like, the price looks good, but how good is the price exactly? And working that out over the next couple weeks.
All right, so Reg Anarch, but just swap out the value cards. I like it.
Yeah, like, we get to cut our gashapons, and then we get to play more events that make us money.
It's true.
That's an interesting card to solve too.
Yeah, no, I think the price is going to be a super interesting card for how you deck build around it. No, that is a good shout for all me, Duncan, on that. So I'm going to say thank you, all three of you, again for coming on. Crowphie is a member of the balance team. Seb is a local who's moving away. So if Seb lands in your meta, he's a great bloke, and that's a weird way to phrase that, but you know what? That's what I'm stuck with now. And welcome into your meta. It'll be worth it. And Jason, champion, we got his champ card up once again. Thank you all three for coming on. For those of you, there is probably not going to be a stream on my channel tomorrow or Sunday because I will be at US Nats. I'm going to try and commandeer the US Nats stream for a little bit, to do a brief, like, whoever I can find by the streaming table talk about the cards. That will probably be on Code Marvelous's stream, but he has not agreed to this yet. This is me coming up with ideas. The other possibility might be I try and do a very quick 15-minute stream from my phone. And then with that will be the end of spoiler season, and I'll have my usual Wednesday stream where I build some decks, talk about the cards I haven't talked about yet, and then immediately the Saturday after, it's going to be APAC, and I'll be definitely tuning in, maybe doing a little bit of comms for that event, but I'm looking forward to seeing what people do with all these new cards. I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up. So thanks again to my guests. Thanks for those of you watching. Thanks to those of you in the chat. It's been a fun spoiler season, and if I don't see you again, hope you are enjoying the new cards as much as I am. So I think with that, I'm going to sign off.